today's session, we are going to focus on modern age. On your screen, you can see there are 12 literary ages given. There is one more to be added, that is 13. It should be actually 13. Postmodern era is not being presented here. So you all have been familiar with all these literary eras, right? Starting from Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Norman, Age of Chaucer, Age of Darkness, Barrenness, Elizabethan Age, Jacobean Age, Age of Milton, Restoration Age, Augustan Age, Romantic Age, Victorian, and Modern. For today's session, I'm going to focus on modern. I will not touch postmodern because time limit is only for an hour. So I would definitely tell you the agenda. How will we go? I am going to talk about the features and the background and the style of writing, prominent writers of modern age, and somewhere we'll touch the surface level, that how modern age is different from postmodern age. What is that thin line difference between these two eras? Okay, so somewhere I'll touch the surface of postmodern, because it will take another hour to come up with postmodern. So let's start with modern age. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Let me go to the first slide. I started with this, that you can see that there are total of 13 literary eras, right? I have not kept the Cavalier and smaller version of it, Caroline poets and all. A broader sense, I'm just telling you that we are going to focus on modern age. That is pointed on point number 12, right? I have not kept postmodern age in this particular slide. Let's go with the first slide of this presentation. Tell me what comes to your mind when you see the right side of your screen. What do you understand? I have just projected a symbol to you. What do you understand by this? Is it a normal book, or is it a kind of rebellion by people? Is it a burnt one? What is it? What comes to your mind? Can you please share?
Ma'am, it is a burned book in a very, very bad condition. Even I think the pages are torn.
Okay, fine. Thank you for speaking. Now let me take the lead. So we are going to focus on modern literary age of English literature that started in 1900 by reign of Queen. Literary era that started in 1900 and lasts till 1950. And it is a pivotal era in English literature. Why am I saying it's pivotal? Because it's projected a radical shift. People were really agitated by the sufferings. They really wanted to protest against the previous literary era that was industrialization, full of industrialization. I'm talking about Victorian age, right? Urbanization was there, growth was there, industrialization was there. So here people just wanted to protest against the traditional method of writing. They did not want to go with the characterization. They did not want to go with the plot, diction, beautification of any text. They would not like to go for putting rhythm in their genres, be it prose, drama, poetry, fiction. So they just wanted to protest. Why? There are several reasons which we are going to focus in the upcoming slides. So I just wanted to tell you in this particular slide that we are going to talk about modern literary era, in which you can find that that was a rise of fragmented narratives. There are some examples like James Joyce to the introspective prose. You might know about Virginia Woolf. You might know about T.S. Eliot. You might know about James Joyce. These are the writers, who would use stream of consciousness, interior monologue, and most of the time they would come up with Oedipus complex, Electra complex. Talking more on setting, attire, just like Shakespeare used to do in Elizabethan era. He would talk about chorus, he would talk about proper beginning, proper middle, proper end. If I talk about dramas, or even if I talk about poetries of Elizabethan era or previous literary eras, you will find a vast difference between the previous literary eras and the modern age. This modernity is not in context of attire or dressing sense or hairstyle or modernity. This was just a kind of modernism which was keeping a thought to just rebel against whatever rules were being made previously, right? People were not in a mood to follow traditional method of writing. They were not in a mood to follow conventional method of writing, projecting on plot, but they were more into reading characters' psyche. That is the reason you will come up with many writers who would focus on schizophrenia, illusion, delusion. Let's talk about several works like Mrs. Dalloway. So I'm going to start with this. Let me go to the next slide before taking you to the examples of works. Let me give you the timeline. Where are we right now? So timeline and context of the modern age. Let's focus on the screen. Modern age represents 1900 to 1950, right? It began in 1900. Whereas you all must be knowing, those who had history or those who have read modern era and their work, it's writers, you must be knowing that World War I started in 1914 and lasts till 1918, right? So this is very much lying in this period of modern age. Second is interwar period, and third is World War II. Now, World War I is known to you, that started in 1914 and lasts till 1918. World War II is also known to you, that is 1939 and it lasts till 1945. Now, what do you mean by interwar period? You might have not heard about it. Is it a war? What is it? It was just a difference between, if you'll see the pointer I am putting it, 1918, the moment World War I ended in the year 1918 and the beginning of 1939, that was World War II. This phase is titled as interwar period. So this was just a transition period. Transition, you all must be knowing, when you're moving from one literary era to another literary era, there is a transition, there is a movement, right? There is a displacement from A to B. That gap is representing interwar period. So for this particular session, we are going to talk about, modern age, and whatever works have been presented during this, literary era is going to be projected here. Let's have a look. Since we are talking about shift from Victorian era to modern era, your, resource person might have discussed about Victorian age in the previous weekend. Let's connect your thoughts on it. Whatever you read, whatever you attended in the previous session, let's try to refresh it. You might have read that, Victorian era started in 1837 when Queen Victoria was there on the throne, and it lasted till 1900. Connecting with that, you all must be knowing that Victorian era was defined by the sense of optimism. Some kind of, people were optimistic in their approach because growth was there, industrialization was there. You can take the example of Pride and Prejudice, and there are so many works you might have seen or read in Victorian era. Faith in progress. They were blindly believing on growth. They were blindly following, the heights. They were least bothered about lower class, and there was a blind faith towards growth and urbanization. So somewhere literature reflected these ideals, often featuring sentimental narratives, romantic love stories, and social commentary. Can you quickly tell me two works of Victorian era? Can you please tell me whatever you have attended in the previous Sunday? Can you tell me two literary works of Victorian era?
Ma'am, we have The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
Great Expectations.
Okay, Great Expectations.
All the Charles Dickens novels.
Right. So in these works, you might have not got yourself familiar with stream of consciousness, psychosexual theory, interior monologue. You might have not bothered about, or the writer, whatever you have read, that might have not bothered about inner psyche of the characters, because they were very much, they're in optimistic sense of their tantrums. They were not keeping any kind of negativity around them. But you can find that in modern era, inner psyche got disturbed, right? We are talking about psychology more than literature in modern era. You will find, I'm going to show you many writers, be it Virginia Woolf, be it T.S. Eliot, be it W.B. Yeats, although he's from postmodern eras, Waiting for Godot, or be it James Joyce. They all would talk about, mind, psyche, happiness, depression, illusions, schizophrenia, Oedipus complex, Electra complex. They would not talk about attire, dressing sense, characterization, chorus, monologue, beautification of text, rhythm, literary devices. They would hardly use literary devices, whatever you might have read in poetry papers by different writers, right? John Milton, Paradise Lost. They would not, modern era poets would not, use all these things, because when you are not happy inside, you would not come up with anything positive on the page. Whatever is there in your background, your literary era would always represent your mindset. Suppose if you want to be a writer, and suppose if you faced COVID, I'll tell you to write something, at that moment of time when you were facing COVID. I know that we would not be able to come up with anything positive because you might be facing, problems around you. You are reading newspapers, giving the count of dead bodies, and it's all locked down. So if you are not happy, if your literary era, if your background is not giving happiness around you, you cannot come up with anything positive on the text. Being a writer, the same thing happened in modern age because of World War I, which started in 1914. People were really shocked. They were, not at all there in their conscious sense. That is the reason they came up with their own narrative style. If I'll take the example of Virginia Woolf, who is one of the very important, prominent writers of modern era, let's take the example of Mrs. Dalloway. Have you read Mrs. Dalloway?
Yes, ma'am. It is in our syllabus.
Yeah, it was a novel written only in a single day. That the time or the setting of that particular novel is representing only 24 hours, only a day, right? When Mrs. Dalloway is throwing a party without any reason. She was not at all happy in her life, but still she was throwing it. Why? What is the reason? Because she just wanted to project fake happiness on the society, that she's also being happy. But somewhere she was always there in the past, when she remembering her memories that she was in love with Peter Wash, her former lover, whom she could not marry because societal Peter was not working then, and she was somewhere very much conscious of society. She married Richard Dalloway, but at the end she found that she took a wrong decision because there was no love, there was no affection. At the end you can find, she was comparing her bed with a graveyard. That what am I doing? My bed is just like a graveyard. I'm all alone. Even my daughter Elizabeth is not keeping in good terms with me. She's more into her, history teacher, tuition teacher. So this is what isolation can be found in Mrs. Dalloway. If I'll take the example of To the Lighthouse, again by the same novelist, that is Virginia Woolf, you will find that Mr. Ramsay, Mrs. Ramsay, you will find multiple narratives. The thing is, it's not like one person is narrating a story to you. It was multiple narratives. Mrs. Ramsay is telling her pain. Mr. Ramsay is telling her patriotism, telling his oppressive mindset. And Lucy, their friends would tell her mindset, her being career oriented. So multiple narratives can be found in modern era. We will not talk about a traditional method of storytelling, जहाँ हम पढ़ते थे कि there was a hero and a heroine और ऐसा होता था. And hero would say this, heroine would say this. Here in modern writings, you will find that there are multiple narratives, and the most difficult part is if you'll open the text, suppose if you're reading Mrs. Dalloway, or if you're reading To the Lighthouse, or you're reading Orlando, or you're reading T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, you will find that who is speaking to whom is missing. You will not be told that there is a character X who's talking to Y and the background is this. No, you have to analyze it, you have to project it, you have to use your all senses to predict that what is being mentioned here. This is what narration was really disturbed. It was not at all linear pattern of discussion. It was non-linear. It was not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Traditional method always says that, in a story there should be a proper beginning, proper middle, proper end, conclusion, happy ending. In Bollywood movies, we always find, happy ending or maybe a kind of conclusion or denouement at the end. But if we talk about modern era, you will find that you will not be told that who's speaking. You just have to analyze that dialogue has been given by somebody to which this person is answering. At the end you will come to know, okay, this conversation was being made between these two people. So you will not be given proper narrative. So why? Because of disturbed psyche of the characters, of the writers, of the novelists, poets who faced World War I in modern age. Okay, so Victorian era, say there was a kind of transition. There was a shift from Victorian to modern era. You can find on the point number 2, I have mentioned transition period from 1819 to 1910. What was it? You can find that there was a rise of social and political movements that challenged Victorian values. Writers began to question traditional beliefs, exploring themes of doubt, alienation, and social injustice. Students in modern era in between Victorian and modern. I'm pointing you on point number 2. Yahan dekho, point number 1, 2, and 3. I'm telling you, point number 2 is a transition period. It was not there overnight. Aisa nahi ke just today 20th October 2024 is the last date of Victorian age, and from 21 onwards we'll have modern era. It's not like that. There was a transition. There was a phase, right? So what is it? That is transitional period, in which people were started doubting. They were being skeptical. They were just doubting the themes. They were finding alienation in themselves. They were finding growth nonsensical. They were not finding any relatability with growth of Victorian era, and they were finding that it was all social injustice to them. What about their status, those who are poor? So this was being discussed in transition period, and then full-fledged modern era started from 1914 and 1945. Just now in the previous slide I told you 1900 it started in, but because it was a transition period, full-fledged stage started in 1914 when World War I hit the country, right? So that marked a significant turning point that somewhere shattered the mindset of people, the writers. They were all in delusion. They were all skeptical. And the very important point, that is existentialism. They were just doubting on their existence. They were just doubting that why God has given, this life to us. Why? What are we doing? We are just dragging our lives. We have nothingness in our life. We don't have any motive. We don't have any objective. What are we doing? They are, keeping nothingness. They are not keeping any targets in their life. They were all disturbed somewhere. And those disturbed writers, when they would write, what kind of text are you expecting from them? These are the examples. T.S. Eliot, Wasteland. This is one of the difficult poetries in literature, talking about disillusioned world. It's difficult. Who's saying? Who's the speaker? Who's being mentioned? If you'll see, there are 5 paragraphs. If you have read Wasteland, 5 paragraphs have been given in it by T.S. Eliot, and let me tell you that all those paragraphs are not at all connected with each other. So what is it? It is just given in fragments. It is just given in a kind of pieces where A is not connected with B, B is not connected with C, C is not connected with D. So they are not at all connected, because writer's mindset is not at all in a not keeping the equilibrium status. It is all fragmented. So you can find the features of that thing in their works also. Right. So themes of war can be found in modern writings. Whatever work you would take up by Woolf, be it with Mrs. Dalloway, there was a background of World War in that. Be it To the Lighthouse, somewhere aftermath of war was there in the background of it. So you will find whatever works you will read, somewhere background with disturbances there, losses there, fractured world, tormented world can be found in it. Okay, let's go with that. Now, what are the characteristics of modern writing style? We did talk about the age. Let's talk about the characteristics of modern writing style. You can find stream of consciousness technique as one of the very important styles of modern writing. You can find fragmented narratives. Just now I told you in the previous slide, fragmented, it's all full of pieces. I mean, there was no connection. Third is experimentation. What kind of experimentation? I'm not talking about, any scientific experimentation, but experimentation in kind of literary text, because they were just being rebellious. Writers of modern era were not in a mood to follow traditional conventional method of writing text with proper beginning, proper middle, proper end, conclusion, characterization, plot, diction, chorus. No, they rejected all those features, and they were just in a mood to experiment something new. Listen, it happens to, it's a very normal tendency. What happened? Suppose you are disturbed. You have been praying on something to God, and God is not listening to your problems. God is not answering your, prayers. What will you do? Somewhere you will feel, suppose you prepared for something, you haven't got it. First attempt you haven't got it. Second attempt you haven't got it. Third attempt you haven't got it. Fourth attempt you have not got it. The level of frustration is rising somewhere within you. Now, what will you do? Either you will become atheist. You will feel that, oh, I just want to change my religion. I don't believe on God because I am following every ritual, everything. I am being, following God, but God is not listening to my prayers. So either you will become rebellious, either you will follow your own, rituals, or you will not in a mood to follow any culture, any ritual, any traditional concept. Right. The same thing happened with the people who were there in modern age. When they got to World War I, they were shocked. Okay, and they were wondering that good times would come, time would change, and maybe prayers would answer. And what happened in postmodern era? When they get postmodern era, what is it? When does it start? It started in 1945 onwards, right? They got another war, that is World War II. So when people were believing, a kind of belief was a little bit there in modern era, but in postmodern era they just became entirely frustrated. They were furious. They were not at all ready to believe on God. Let me give you the example of postmodern era, that is Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. So Waiting for Godot, Godot, what is it? Godot is represented as God, where the characters, there was barrenness in the text. You will find those who have read it. The setting was, there was a bald, barren tree which was not keeping any leaf on it. This was the setting. It was all bald and not a single leaf was there. Symbolism is there. Leaf, greenery represents life. So there was no nothingness in the setting. And there was one of the characters who was suffering from prostate gland. So what is it? We are more into personal problems. We are more into characters' psyche and sufferings. Least bothered about the dialogue and characterization and dialogue, that who would come up with that first. And these two characters, Lucky and Pogo, they were just waiting for God. The entire title of drama was Waiting for Godot, and at the end, God does not exist because Godot does not come. Frustration, height of frustration was there in the drama of postmodern era titled Waiting for Godot, was said by Samuel Beckett. Here, if I'll talk about modern era, they were somewhere shocked. Out of that shock, they were more into their own psyche. They were not able to focus on the characterization. Sorry, that is the reason they started experimenting. They were just being rebellious. They did not want to follow the traditional method. They fragmented the structure. They started using their own style. They started using their own techniques of narration, representing complexities of the world, right? You will find that psychosexual depth can also be found. Very prominent example of modern era, psychology. When you will read the text of modern age, be it T.S. Eliot, be it Virginia Woolf, be it D.H. Lawrence, Sons and Lovers, be it Orlando, Waves, Room of One's Own, whatever works. I'm just pointing out some major writers to you. You will find that psychological terms are more than literary. You will not find purple patch. You will not find pastiche. You will not find, literary sense on those particular texts. More of that sense, you will find psychosexual theory, psychoanalysis, illusion. So I'm telling you, whatever words, they all are from psychology. Schizophrenia, illusion, stream of consciousness, interior monologue, eros, thanatos, theory of thanatos, urge for death. Modern writers were believing that death can only be the solution. Death can, fulfill all the problems. You are struggling in your life, let's commit suicide. Let's die. Death will be the eternal peace. You will find this as a theme, prominent themes of modern writings. Let's take the example of Mrs. Dalloway. There are two conjoined circles, right? Story was one, day was only one, but there are two stories being conjoined with each other. One was of shell-shocked veteran Septimus Warren Smith, who lost his friend Ivan, and he was not able to focus on the current world. Let me tell you, if you have not seen the movie, or if you have not read the text, there was a scene when he was sitting in a garden and he was just wondering that a bird is flying and bird is just coming near to him and just scolding him. What are you doing? You should be, you are being shameful on your personal life. What happiness are you bringing to your wife Lucy? So even this character Ivan, that who's a veteran, shell-shocked veteran, he was talking to trees, even he was talking to birds, that no, this is not like that, I'm still being suffering, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Even those trees, wherever he was sitting, he was wondering that those trees are coming near to him and they are just in a mood to grab him. So what is it? This is what his wife was surprised, that why my husband is so disturbed. You can find that psychological aspects are more into modern writings. Let's take the example of Mrs. Dalloway. Mrs. Dalloway was somewhere wondering that what am I doing? If you'll see the the beginning of this text. Oh, what a lovely morning it is. She's just pretending as if she's happy. But the moment she found that Peter Wash, her former lover, came to meet, her in London, she was just mending her green colored gown. Symbolism is there. Why only green? Why should have taken purple? She should have taken magenta. She should have taken any other color. But she was just mending her gown. Now, why mending is mentioned? This is symbolism. Her life was fragmented. She was not being happy with her husband. That was Richard Dalloway. She was mending. That mending is somewhere representing that she was just mending her life also. Her mind was still there with her ex-suitor whom she rejected because, she was very class conscious in her age when she was 15. But now she's not happy. So she was mending green color. Why green? Because she was looking for life. Okay, and this is what you can find in modern era. We are more into symbolism. We are more into psychology. We are more into psychological terms. We are not talking about writing styles which Shakespeare or Elizabethan era or any other Jacobean era would talk about. They were not, these features are being absent here. Main reason were suffering, trauma, struggle, and all. Let me quickly speed up because it's 12:03 right now. Characteristics of modern writing style. Now listen, in the previous slide, I did talk about characteristics of modern writing style. Now, continuing the same particular topic, symbolism and irony and ambiguity. Just now I told you symbolism, you will find that, let me give you the example of Virginia Woolf's work, To the Lighthouse. If you have read it, To the Lighthouse, Mrs. Ramsay is being sitting on her dining table. She's being, very much, she is just being oppressed by her husband. Her husband is very dominating, and she's just scrolling her fingers on the table mat. Okay, now table mat. These nitty-gritties have been mentioned. Minute detailings have been mentioned. So on that table mat, table cover, you will find there was a flower being embroidered, right? There was a crochet work which was being done on the table cover mat. Now, what was being drawn on it? It was a flower. If you'll read the text, you will find all those things. If you'll read punctuation or summary, you will not find these nitty-gritties. So, why only flower? Why not any other, embroidery or crochet work being mentioned by Virginia Woolf in her work To the Lighthouse? Femininity. Because she was representing femininity. She was so fragile. Let me quote Simone de Beauvoir's quote here. Women is a, second sex, right? Women is a she's being made up of one of the ribs of a man. Why? She's being oppressed. She's being, very much dominated by her husband. And she's just been scrolling the flower which is being embroidered on the table cover. Symbolism is being projected there. Nitty-gritties have been mentioned here. We are talking about character and things around it. Even if you will see the painting and drawing, suppose symbolism is very much clear. Let me give you in layman's term because there must be some first year student also. You all are aware that, red rose is a symbol of love, white is a symbol of peace, black is a symbol of maybe something related to demise, sad demise. Pink is a symbol of femininity, or yellow is a symbol of friendship. What is it? These are all symbols. If you are reading a text in which you are finding a character sitting in a room where there was a painting being hung on the wall and in which a ship is drowning, what do you think? Is it in a positive setting? No, it is just being keeping a negativity. Maybe drowning is representing depressive thing, or maybe, so these are the symbols which can be found in modern era. More of symbols can be found in it, right? So you can find these features in the text of modern writing style. Irony and ambiguity. Now, irony and ambiguity played a very significant role in the modernist writing, and somewhere it challenged, the readers to have a critical thinking on it. Ironical context would be there. Ambiguity, there would be no linear pattern. You would be very skeptical to read it, that who is the speaker, who is the listener, and what is the setting. You need to find out it on your own, because writer hasn't bothered about you struggling on all these points, because writer himself or herself is suffering with his or her own psyche somewhere because of the World War and nothingness in the background. So these are the features you can find in the texts of modern age. Now, what are the characteristics of modern literature? Now listen, don't be confused with the previous slide. Previous slide you can find, we did talk about characterization of modern writing style. Abhi hum baat kar rahe hain literature. Now, what all literature can be found under this? See, focus on individual experience. Yes, I keep telling you again and again this by many works, be it T.S. Eliot, be it Samuel Beckett, be it Virginia Woolf. They would more into individual experience. They would not talk about other characters' psyche. Suppose they would more be into individual experience. Just now I gave you the example of Mrs. Dalloway. Next point is emphasis on form. Now, form, what do you understand? Are we going to talk about structure here? Form became a crucial element in modern literature. Writers were conscious of the structure and language they used, often employing innovative poetic forms, exploring the relationship between content and style, and this experimentation form challenged conventional literary norms. So you can find that they were putting more emphasis on the inner psyche, and the form got really disturbed in that sense. They were doing experiments with their techniques. They were doing non-narrative, non-linear pattern. They were not focusing on explaining anything from beginning to end. They were more into instead of saying the story in A-B-C-D-E-F-G-H form, they would come up with Ka-Kha-Ga, A-B-C-D, algebra, and 1, 2, 3. What have I done? I mixed everything. I said Hindi, I said English, I said maths. So this is the style which modern era would come up with. They would start their drama with a flashback scene, and you can find all these things very much there in this particular latest in trend. You can find all these things presently also. So you will find, flashback, say, is a novel is being started and you don't know whose body is being lying on the floor, and then at the end you will come up with the introduction. At the end of the novel, you will find, okay, that body which was being laying on the road, that was his body. Okay, this is the character that is being mentioned at the end of the novel. So this is what non-linear pattern is. Characters were being presented in a random way. 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the narration style, right? The reflection of modernity. So this is what is it? So modern literature mirrored the anxieties. You can find the anxieties of all the characters, their sufferings, their challenges, and industrialization, technological advancement was very much can always be found in the modern texts. Let's talk about the major writers. Major writers, modernist writers. I was telling you about all these. James Joyce. Okay, what is the famous work of this writer? James Joyce, he always would come up with his complex, innovative works. It would not be easy for you to understand, James Joyce or any of these writers' work if you don't have a background of psychology. You need to know it. If you don't know psychology, if you don't know Oedipus complex, if you don't know Electra complex, if you don't know stream of consciousness, mood swings, illusion, it takes time for you to understand the character and the text. So that is the reason, more than literature, in modern age, we are more into psychology. Okay, so theory of Thanatos, that is urge for death, can be found in the writing style. Theory of Eros, that is urge for life. There are two types of people, I can say. Suppose if you fall yourself in problem, okay, you will, situation number one, you will think that, oh, let's end my life. There's no solution. These kind of people are falling under theory of Thanatos, meaning they find that death can only be the solution of their lives. Whereas Eros means they are very lively, they are full of life, even if their life is full of problems, even if their life is hell, but still they find hope in it. So Eros and Thanatos, literature will not teach you this, but psychology first introduce all these terms. So if you are familiarized with psychology, you would really be able to understand modern age in a better way. James Joyce's work, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. You might have read this. If you have not, you would in PG. Ulysses again, it is talking about stream of consciousness. Okay, so inner psyche is being mentioned. I have pointed out here, stream of consciousness technique is just being mentioned here in this work. Just look at the writers and their writing style. Am I not talking about the things which we discussed in the previous slide? Stream of consciousness used by James Joyce, who's one of the major modernist writers. Virginia Woolf, who was a very key figure in the Bloomsbury group. She explored interior lives of characters, and examples are Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, even Orlando, if I'll tell you, lesbianism, androgyny, androgynous mind, androgyny. What do you mean by this? Have you heard this term? Andro means male. Genie means gynae, right? Female. Amalgamation of male and female. When character or the protagonist is somewhere skeptical about his orientation. Orlando is the example of it. You will find that a character would be keeping, a love relationship with a girl. Even if I'll talk about Mrs. Dalloway, if you have read the text, I do not agree with this point that Mrs. Dalloway was, in the beginning, she was keeping lesbian relationships with Vita Sackville West, if I'm not wrong. So what is it? When your mind is disturbed, you cannot expect anything normal from the, mindset or writing style. So androgyny is a very prominent theme of modern era. Androgynous mindset. Transgender can be found in the character sketches. Mrs. Dalloway was in love with the Peter Wash, whom she did not marry. She was also attracted towards Sally Seton. Actually, I told you Vita Sackville West. This was the real character. Character was Vita Sackville West. Sally Seton. Sally Seton was based on Vita Sackville West, and Mrs. Dalloway was based on Virginia Woolf. So in real life also you can find that Virginia Woolf was keeping lesbian relationships with her close friend Vita Sackville West. So this relationship was being mentioned in the character of Mrs. Dalloway and Sally Seton in the novel Mrs. Dalloway. So you can find that you cannot find and expect anything normal from the characters because their psyche was disturbed. So next is T.S. Eliot. Eliot's poetry, including Wasteland, if you have read it, you must be agreeing with this point that this is very difficult because there are multiple narrations, okay? This is all given in fragments, no connection of para number 1 to 5. Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, again, it is one of the very difficult poetries, which is representing complex symbolism and innovative use of language. Next is William Faulkner. This is again American modernist, and The Sound and the Fury, Consciousness. So these are the works which you can find that have been used by it. I have mentioned a work here. I need to speed up now. It's 12:15. On the left side of your screen, you can find there is a poetry being mentioned, and the title is Delight. Right? It is by Amy Ludwig Wanderwater. Now, what is it? Have you read this poetry? You might have not read. There is a ladybug which is being mentioned in this poetry. Can you imagine only a ladybug? Can you write a poetry on an insect? So ladybug, what kind of feeling she might have been keeping while sucking anybody's blood? That is being mentioned. Only her exposure to that particular ambience, her feelings and her experience with it. So you can find out, narrow down, approach, and narration is kind of keeping a different segment here. So these are the examples. New perspective in modernist poetry. You can find poetry were not like Elizabethan modern Jacobean or neoclassical artificiality, or just like Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope, it represented neoclassical artificiality. You can not find all these things in modern poetries, but you can only find, inner psyche. You can only find somebody's experience with the world. That's it. Somebody is the only thing which is important. Rest is all, writer would unbothered of. Themes and subjects in modern literature. We keep talking about this in the previous slide also. Alienation and isolation can be found. Search of meaning, that is existentialism, can be found. Impact of war can be found in the things. Influence of World War I on modern literature. I keep telling you this thing that disillusionment, trauma can example of trauma. I just gave you the example of Mrs. Dalloway that shell shocked veteran. What is it? that is being mentioned, trauma there. Social change, societal change is very much there in Mrs. Dalloway. Disillusionment can be found in any of the works, whatever I mentioned previously. Experimentation with form and language, they are representing experimentation. We are discussing it past many slides. These are the things you can find in the picture on the right screen. Fragmentation, this is all fragment. I mean, there's no connection, there is no common thread. It is all given in pieces. You need to make a jumbled word game in a form of, one particular segment. So this is what, you can find. Interior monologues can be found in it. I hope you must be knowing interior monologue. Characters would be into interior monologue and stream of consciousness. So, interior monologue, that is provided readers with direct access to characters' inner thought. Character is more into talking to himself, instead of talking to the audience. Fine. Now, new perspective in modernist poetry. We are aware that modern writers started opting for free words. They were not in a mood to follow any rhythm, literary devices. They would write without keeping any words, without keeping any rhythm, without keeping any scheme, no rhyming scheme. Everything is in blank words. Because you can give beautification to the text only when you are good at your mind. When you are not healthy here, you cannot talk on the accessories which are to be implemented in the texts. So they all used to come up with free words. Imagism can be found, very important segment of modern age. Symbolism, I already mentioned in many of the slides previously. Symbols can be found in a vast, broader sense in this. Coming back to the next lasting impact of the modern literary age, you can find that influence on subsequent literature can be found of it. Exploration of human condition can be seen, and expansion of literary boundaries can also be found in it. These are some pictures, visual representation of the modern literary age. I did talk about World War. Images of devastation and human cost of World War offer a visceral understanding of context in which modernism arose. I gave you many examples, be it To the Lighthouse, be it Mrs. Dalloway, be it any other work. Background may always you can find World War is there in modern age. Virginia Woolf is one of the examples who has come up with these settings and background. T.S. Eliot again. You can find his poetry is very difficult to analyze. Modernist writers and works, you can find these are the things which are somewhere representing it. Now, prominent modernist writers, you can find, I did talk about James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, T.S. Eliot, W.B. Yeats, T.H. Lawrence, Ernest Hemingway. Let's talk about Ernest Hemingway. I haven't talked about this. So these are some prominent writers. You should be keeping all of them in your fingertips. If somebody asks you, just like gave you the example of Samuel Beckett, Waiting for Godot. I did mention that he's from postmodern. You should not be confused. You should be keeping all these points in your mind that these are the writers who belong to modern age and these are the writers who belong to postmodern age. So it should be mugged up by you. Major works of them are Ulysses, Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, Orlando, To the Lighthouse. So you can see the themes. Let's focus on the themes. I did tell you about all these things. The Second Coming, The Lake of Isle of Innisfair, Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, A Farewell to Arms, for Whom the Bell Tolls. Now, I am least bothered about the text. Let us focus on the themes. Are they connected? Are we talking about the same themes in all the works? See, the writers are different here, but let's focus on the theme. Identity, consciousness, modern city. Gender, time, inner life. Modernity, loss, tradition. Irish identity, mysticism, nationalism. Sexuality, nature, social class. War, masculinity, lost generation. And this one is, wait. These are all connected. Don't you think that they are different writers, but their themes are all connected? Most of them are talking about lost generation. Most of them are talking about sexuality. Most of them are talking about oppression. Most of them are talking about consciousness, because they all are keeping the same background, right? So I did talk on this. Now, what is the thin line difference between modern and postmodern? I am left with only 10 minutes. So let me quickly cover this point also. Although I did tell you in the beginning that I'm not going to talk about the postmodern era, but let me quickly tell you, whatever person would take up the next week session, you should keep this mindset that, postmodern and modern era, these are two different literary cultural movements. We have read modernism today, and each of it have its own characterization, historical context, and philosophical underpinnings. Now let's have a quick look on the differences between these two. Let's talk on the point number one, historical context. Historical context mein modernism talks about late 19th and mid 20th century. Late 19th students, matlab late Victorian era. Remember the transition period? I did tell you कि एकदम से modern era did not start, right? So that modernism started in late Victorian. That was late Victorian and modern. So this is modernism. It emerged in the 19th century and peaked into the 20th century when World War I hit. And it was a response to the rapid industrialization, urbanization, and the horrors of war. They were all scared. That is the reason, they were doubting on their existence, reflecting disillusionment with traditional values. Whereas postmodern, if I'll talk about this with the context of historical setting, postmodernism started in 20th century altogether full-fledged, and it began after World War I. So point number one, difference between modern and postmodern is modern era started in late 19th and lasts till 20th century, till World War I. And postmodern started in World War II. Now World War II, when this hit, people were wondering that good times would never come. God does not exist. It's all nonsensical. Nobody's there to listen to our prayers. We don't believe in God. Atheism was there. People were rebellious. They became atheist, right? Modernism, they were not atheist. They were keeping hope that, time would change. But postmodern, they just started feeling nothingness around them. And this is in context of historical background, right? Next point of difference, philosophy and themes. Modernism, you can find emphasis were more into, reason, progress, and there was a belief in the possibility of objective truth and the use of literature to search for deeper meaning, right? And themes often include alienation, disillusionment, fragmentation, search for meaning. These are the prominent themes you can find under modern age. Writers focus on the individual experience. I did tell you the example of Lily Briscoe of To the Lighthouse. I did tell you Mrs. Dalloway, Clarissa Dalloway. I did tell you about multiple narrations. Right, this is the difference in context of philosophy and themes. Whereas if we'll talk about the same context and the difference for postmodernism, you will find rejected the idea of absolute truth and universal narrative. They are not at all believing on absolute truth. They just rejected it. Frustration level was on peak. The modern it was not that frustration, but postmodern they were rebellious. They were not in a mood to believe on God. Okay? It embraces relativism and the idea truth of subjective constructed. Themes often include irony, parody, playfulness, pastiche, and fragmentation of reality. You must be wondering that I did talk of all these things in the previous era also, but yes, higher version of all these things can be found in the current one. Postmodern often questions the ability to find meaning, embracing ambiguity, and even celebrating meaninglessness. So they were simply celebrating nothingness. I told you Waiting for Godot is the example of postmodern era, and where these characters who their names are not even being focused. Pogo and Lucky. Lucky was not at all lucky in his life. Pogo, what do you mean by it? And he was, one of the characters was suffering from prostate gland. He would always go to pee. So these are some petty, nitty-gritties being mentioned because more into psyche, more into personal sense was being mentioned there. Nothingness. They were just celebrating. What are they doing? If you have read Waiting for Godot, they just sat on a road waiting for God to come. And, God would not come. They don't have anything to go. I mean, they don't have to go anywhere. They are not ambitious. They are not keeping any objective in their life. They are just dragging their life because God has given life to them, and they are just being, abusing God. That what are you doing? Are you really there? We don't believe on you. We have become atheists now. So this can be found in the postmodernism. Level of frustration is on the peak. Line between high and low culture is often blurred, and there's a focus on intertextuality and metafiction. Works that are self-aware and their status as text can be found under postmodern. Next point of difference is form and structure. Form and structure. For modernism, you can find that favored experimentation and form narrative. You can find still aim for coherence in presenting ideas and themes. This include the use of stream of consciousness technique. Examples are James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, unreliable narration, fragmented timeline. Timeline is not told to you. मैंने बताया. Even if you'll talk about Mrs. Dalloway, if you have read the text, you will find what is that place? I'm not getting the name where what is this girl? Clarissa Dalloway used to live. What was that place? Burton, if I'm not wrong, Burton, before marriage. So it should actually be started with that there was a girl who was 15 years old, or she was in love with Peter Wash, and she has a good friend, Sally Siton. It should be started in this, but novel did not start in this way, because this was a non-linear narration. They would not be 1 2 3 4. They would be ka ABCD 1 2 3 4 5 7. So in that way, the novel started in a lady who's going to throw a party, okay, who was really frustrated in life. She then decided, now Abhi started with the party, but going on the back, that day of her life, and she opened the door and was wondering that let's buy some flowers for the party. Now Abhi, what is it? Party already ho chuki hai, but uska beginning preparation is being mentioned, and then dikhaya ja raha hai ki you're going to the past, and then this girl was in love with somebody whom she rejected, and now that lover who's being there in India, and he's in love with an Indian girl now. Now he is going to visit London to get divorced. Of that girl who's a divorcee. If you have read the text, you must be getting it, because I cannot tell you the story in this 1 hour session. So can you understand what I'm telling you? The story did not start in a way कि एक girl थी और ऐसा हुआ. It was like ऐसा हुआ और ऐसे थी और ऐसा हो रहा है. There was no proper narration. So you can find this under modernism. Whereas postmodernism often rejects traditional narrative forms entirely. They reject higher version of frustration here. Stories may lack a clear beginning, middle, end, and may even disrupt linearity altogether. This is what I was telling you in the previous one. So, metafiction is common, where the text draws attention to itself and constructed artifact. Examples are Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse 5. I don't think you have read this work, because UGPG may it's not given. Have you read it? I have a doubt on it, but I just mention it because this is simply explaining metafiction somewhere. Next is the use of passage. The blending of genre, style, and references can be found in postmodern era. That is very prominent here, and where postmodern works freely combine different elements without sense of unity and coherence. You cannot find any coherence. You cannot find any unity in postmodern era. Next point of difference between modern and postmodern is attitude towards the past. Yeah, very important point. Modernism may modernists reject the past in an attempt to make it new. Like let's take the example of Ezra Pound famously put it. They believe that traditional forms and values were no longer relevant in the modern world and sought to break free from them. And there was often an underlying belief that the new forms could help restore. So what is it? Attitude towards the past. Modern era, they simply rejected it. They did not want to follow whatever was being followed in Victorian era, Neoclassical era, Elizabethan era. No, they were not bothered about it. They were wondering that we'll invent something new, experimentation, right? Postmodern embraces the past. This is a vast difference between them. See, modernists rejected, postmodernist embraces the past, often using past forms or styles in an ironic or playful way. See, they accepted or embraces the past, but in an ironic way. They were being sarcastic, okay, right? Comment karke, tanz karke, they would you talk about the past. There is no sense of trying to build a new order. Rather, postmodernism mocks the very idea of creating order or meaning. So you can find parody or pastiche are used to comment and deconstruct earlier styles movements without a need to proper alternative. So one point of difference, you can understand that one is rejecting the past, another is embracing the past, but in an ironical state, sarcastic state. Next point of difference is example of authors and works. That is very easy here. Modernism, you should know all these are authors: James Joyce, T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf, Ernest Hemingway, Franz Kafka, that's very important for UGC NET, and William Faulkner. Next works of theirs are Ulysses by James Joyce, Wasteland by Eliot, To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, Sound and the Fury by Faulkner. These are the very important works of modern era, which I was telling you in the previous slides. Whereas postmodern era, you can find Thomas Pynchon, John DeLillo, Salman Rushdie, Kurt Vonnegut, Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood, you might have read. It is there in PG, I think. So their works are, see, Gravity is Rainbow by Pynchon, Slaughterhouse 5 by Vongert, White Noise by DeLillo, and Handmaid's Tale by Atwood. So these are the writers who are very prominent. Let's quickly check it. I think it's time, and it's 31. These are some questions. Pramiti, can you tell me, should I take up these, or do you want me to wind up? There are some questions where although answers are also being mentioned. Should I take this up or not?
You can take up the doubts.
Okay, fine. So can I put up a questionnaire session? These are some important. See, who was considered the father of modernist literature? You all are aware of it. James Joyce is the one who is being considered as modernist father literature. Which literary work is considered the epitome of modern stream of consciousness writing? This is Ulysses by James Joyce. T.S. Eliot's poem "The Wasteland" reflects the disillusionment of which historical event? This was even asked in MPPSC exam also. This is very important for your competitive exam. That is represented World War I. Which of the following is a major theme in modernist literature? Modernist literature, romantic to ho hi nahi sakta, Victorian nahi ho sakta, alienation, isolation, religious division. This is very easy, alienation. Which novel of Virginia Woolf uses the concept of moment of being? Moment of being, just pardon the spelling mistake. This is To the Lighthouse is the answer. What literary technique is frequently used in modernist literature to explore the inner thought of characters? This is stream of consciousness. Which movement is closely associated with modernist literature? That is surrealism. It cannot be realism, transcendentalism, and postmodernism. It is surrealism. Which of the following plays by Samuel Beckett is quintessential example of modernist theatre? That is Waiting for Godot. I did talk on this. Ezra Pound's slogan, "Make it new," is most closely associated with which literary movement? That is modernism. So if you go with a detailed text analysis, you will be able to answer these questions. I just randomly put it. Which of these novels portrays the impact of war on a soldier and his alienation from the society? This is A Farewell of Two Arms by Ernest Hemingway. Anyways, I'm done with these questions. I just randomly told you. Answers were also being told to you. If you have any doubt, please tell me.
Ma'am, I had a doubt. Ma'am,
please
that you said that for studying modernism, you should know some psychological concepts. So how should we know about them? Yeah, how should we study them?
Suppose, see, it is not in your hand actually. If you don't have a background of psychology in your UG, you cannot help it. There are so many students of mine at my current place, who had a background of commerce, UG in commerce, and then opted for PG in English. Now, what you have to do, if you are finding your paper is going to state some of the topics or works which are representing modern age, you really need to dive in the psychology of it. Suppose aap pad rahe ho Mrs. Dalloway, you really need to know Sigmund Freud first, right? So whatever text, suppose if you are doing self-study and you are taking modernism as a age you want to prepare for your exams, what will you do? You will find all those psychosexual theories given by psychologists, be it Sigmund Freud, be it any other writer. You need to know, you need to dive inside the text. Agar aap pad rahe ho that text mein aapne padha, literature text, that this is a psychosexual theory used by Eugene O'Neill in the text Morning Becomes Electra. Suppose I am taking the example, Morning Becomes Electra is a drama written by Eugene O'Neill. Now, you will be doubtful on the title because, what is Electra here? It is something, it is representing Electra, which is, a Greek character. But you should also know that what psychosexual theory is it being representing, because this drama is entirely keeping Oedipus complex and Electra complex. So to read modern age, you need to know the psychosexual theories. You need to read Sigmund Freud first. You need to find out, you need to Google on your own psychological topics or what is it? Literature text based on psychology. What all pointers are being mentioned in the text, you need to study. You need to make points on it. आपने साइकोलॉजी पढ़ा, साइकोएनालिसिस पढ़ा, आपने सिगमंड फ्रॉइड का थ्योरी ऑफ थैनेटोस पढ़ा. अगर आपको लगता है कि लिटररी क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस, सपोज आपने देखा कि व्हाई एवरीबॉडी इज कमिटिंग सुसाइड इन मिसेस डेलावे, व्हाट इज इट? इफ यू गो विद द रिसर्च पेपर, आप कोई भी टेक्स्ट पढ़ते हो, आई वुड ऑलवेज सजेस्ट understood 4 to 5 research papers on that text. आपने पढ़ा, Mrs. Jalove. You have also read 5 to 6 research papers written by this particular on this writer. So you might have come up with this. Arey, what is this theory of Thanatos? You have not read this in literature. Who has come up with this? Okay, Sigmund Freud. Who is he? Okay, he is the father of psychology. What all theories has he come up with? And what all theories are being there used by the writers in literature? Okay, Virginia Woolf is the one who used psychosexual theory. Okay, Eugene O'Neill is used there. These theories in Morning Becomes Electra, Electra Complex. Okay, Hamlet. No, Hamlet mein you can find this, but this is from Elizabethan era. I have just given you the example of Shakespeare. So you need to know the base, because somewhere literature is the amalgamation of psychology. You can find read psychology in literature and literature in psychology. It is like that. It is conjoined. So if you don't have a base of psychology, no problem, because there are many students who would keep background may become but with top in PG. So you need to work on your own, go with the theories, make your notes, dissect the text, analysis karo, critical reading, read research papers. The way you read would define you, give you a kind of finishing in your preparation for the exams. This is what I just can tell you.